Judgment is something that plagues all of us. And it's tricky because it's not inherently bad. Judgment is actually very useful. You walk up to a stove. It's useful to have the capacity to judge, is it going to be hot or is it not going to be hot? It's useful to judge. You've got to, leap over a little chasm. You're going to walking over rocks. There's a little space between the rocks. It's useful to be able to judge, can I make it? Is that an easy leap? Or is that a risky leap? So actually having good judgment is something that we have been evolutionarily programmed for. Presumably our ancestors who could not properly judge whether that was an easy leap or not didn't last very long to pass on their genes. Those who couldn't judge whether the look on that bear's face or tiger's face was friendly or not friendly, friend or foe, didn't last long enough to pass on their genes. So the judgment of friend or foe, safe, unsafe, doable, not doable, burning hot, not burning hot, is actually good. The place that judgment becomes so difficult is where our judgment gets limited to one aspect of who we are, but we extrapolate into all of who we are. So, I'm carrying a cup of coffee up the stairs or down the stairs. I misjudge that 2 steps at once was doable. Turned out it wasn't doable. I trip and spill the coffee. Okay. Not an evolutionary disaster. We're still going to live long enough to pass on our genes. But what happens is the mind goes, you idiot. You're such a klutz. You're so stupid. I mean, really, like you can't even walk up the stairs? And this goes, you can't do anything. Maybe it was a good intention. Maybe you were taking the cup of coffee to someone else. And then the drama goes even deeper. See, even you try to do something good, you can't. Even this do one random act of kindness every day thing isn't going to work for you because, look, you were doing it. Bringing a hot cup of coffee to a colleague who was, up to her shoulders or neck in work. And what do you end up with? Burned with stained clothing. You can't do anything. See, what's happened is the judgment of you as an entirety has now become relegated to your capacity to hold a hot cup of coffee and traverse 2 steps at once without looking. It's a tough task. Some people could probably do it, some people couldn't. It has nothing to do with your worthiness as a human being. It has nothing to do with the importance of serving others and being kind. It just ends up hurting us. And so this is where judgment becomes something that we have to really work with. But not in a all judgment is bad. Common sense is very useful. Discrimination is very useful. Truth, not truth. And that's just a form of judgment. Truth, not truth. Healthy, not healthy. Light, dark. Safe, not safe. But when judgment is turned inward first, and then we'll look at outward, it becomes a disease. And this is what we have to work with. And it's just a pattern. It's a habit. And the good thing is, like any habit, it can be changed. The first thing is to see it. Because almost all of these mind games dissipate the minute you look at them. Jealousy. Wow. Welcome to tea. Haven't seen you in a while. What it does is, we've called it by name, which means it's not me. So we'll go back to our hot coffee example. Internal judgment. Wow, all right, I almost made it 2 hours without your presence. Okay, judgment, here we are. You call it by its name. You see it. You don't berate it. You don't judge it. Because then, of course, you just wind yourself even deeper. There I am judging myself again. God, I can't even do the spiritual thing right. Forget carrying coffee up 2 cups of stairs. Can't do anything. So it just becomes yet another excuse to berate ourselves. Wandering mind. Can't even meditate. Knew I was a useless banker, but really I can't even meditate either. So you just call it by name. Okay. Judgment. Then, if you're someone, as I am, who happens to find psychology fascinating, not as a black hole into which we get and spin around for eternity and never get out, but simply as a path to shed some light on some of why we are like we are, you may want to look at, and if not in that moment, at other times, you may want to look at, all right, where did that come from? Clearly, I'm not a worthless human being for spilling a cup of coffee. Where did that come from? And the reason that I recommend that is, if we know where it came from, it also dissipates it. Because that voice comes in like it's the voice of the universe. Really, I mean, all of those voices, they come in like this just booming voice of God. You are the worthless one. And if we can identify it, yeah, I remember. My mom, my dad, my uncle, my teacher, my brother, whatever it was. It gives it that context that makes it no longer the booming voice of the universe. And you just change your habit. So I've looked at it, I've named it, which in that moment has dissipated its power. B, at some time in my life, I may be interested in going in psychologically into why I have that. Again, it helps dissipate it. Because then when the voice comes, you can just say, Mrs. Smith, it was really difficult to be in your 4th grade class. I'm no longer in your 4th grade class, and I'm not going to allow your voice to continue to stay in my mind for the rest of my life. I wish you well in your retirement. You can do that, and you'll notice that there's always a little bit of an edge of humor with it. I mean, for me at least. Because I have personally found it works very well. We take ourselves really seriously. We take our problems really seriously. And the more seriously we take them, the heavier they become. And I have found that simply naming it, having a little lightness with it, it doesn't mean that you're undermining it. It doesn't mean that the impact on you didn't matter. It's not deprecating. It's just adding a little bit of lightness to it. Because the minute that there's space for a little giggle, that you've created, you've got your foot in the door. And your foot in the door is the first step to getting out of that situation. And then the last piece is you just create different patterns. So when judgment comes, you didn't start judging yourself and others overnight. It was a habit. Maybe your parents, maybe that was what you listened to every time you went out with your parents. In the car on the way there, in the car on the way back, all you heard them doing was judging others. My God, did you see what she was wearing? Did you see what he was wearing? Did you see how many pakoras he ate? My God, I mean, is he... We pick it up. Who does he think he is? Who does she think he is? What is she doing with him? My God, he must have a lot of money or something, because, you know, this type of negative nonsense is what fills up the space in a lot of cars, a lot of dining tables, a lot of tea rooms. And when we're young and really impressionable, these are the patterns that get laid in our brain. We judge. We criticize. And of course, we learn to do it to ourselves first. And then we do it to others. So lay a new habit. The minute that voice of judgment comes, you look at it, judgment. Choose something different. You've got options. You know, if you're diabetic, let's say, and you're just diagnosed with diabetes, every time in your life that you've gone to the grocery store, you've thrown a pint of ice cream or 4 into your cart. It's part of your standard grocery list. Haagen-Dazs. Well, now you've been diagnosed with diabetes. Habitually, you're going to push that cart right to the ice cream aisle. Habitually, you're going to open the thing. At some point, a voice in your head is going to say, no. Not if I want to be healthy. And you close the door and you don't put it in the cart and you maneuver the cart to a different aisle. It just takes a while to lay a new pattern. 2 years after not putting ice cream in your cart, it's no longer going to go on autopilot over there. You're going to find yourself heading straight to produce. But it takes a while. You've got to lay... This is, in Indian culture, we talk about sanskaras. In science, we talk about neural networks, patterns. But it's all the same stuff. It's just habits. So every time a judgment comes, judgment. Not anymore. Just as I don't want diabetes to ruin my physical health, I don't want judgment to ruin my spiritual health. But I've got to take just as much control over what I allow inside my mind as I do what I allow inside my body. We somehow intuitively understand that physically, but not so much spiritually and emotionally. And last piece of this actually is also really important, which is check who you hang out with. Because even if you're learning not to judge, these patterns, a lot of them are really subconscious. Hang out with people who are judging each other, who are judging themselves. Feel free to say, you know what, I'm on a judgment diet, guys. I'd love to be with you. Would love to hang out. Would anybody mind if we changed the subject? Isn't it a beautiful day? And see. Real friends would not drop you because you got diabetes and stopped eating Haagen-Dazs. They'd say, well, that's all right. When you're around, we'll eat carrots. And if they insist on making you eat Haagen-Dazs, well, they're not real friends. And in the same way, if they're not able to change their pattern of speech, or they're not willing to, this is when you start looking for a new sangha, a new group that's more supportive of the new patterns that you're laying.